everyone, and welcome to the Propcast. My name is Louisa Dickens, co-founder of LMR Re and board director of the UKPA, and I shall be your weekly host. Each week for 30 minutes, we'll be connecting the VCs, prop tech startups, and real estate professionals globally, and assist in bridging that famous communication gap we all love talking about. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Propcast. Today, we will be talking about how technology is revolutionizing leasing, and we are joined by Demetrios Barnes, COO of SmartRent, and Tyler Christiansen, CEO of Funnel. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us here, Lou.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now, before we start with the podcast, let's give a quick introduction to both of our wonderful guests. So Demetrios is the co-founder and chief operating officer of SmartRent, where he leads the support, field operations, and account services teams. Prior to co-founding SmartRent, he was vice president of technology for Colony Starwood Homes. Previously, Demetrios was director of property management and technology for Biza Pre-Owned Rental Homes and a regional manager for several multifamily companies. Demetrios holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Arizona State University. Now, SmartRent empowers property owners, operators, and home builders to effectively manage, protect, and automate daily on-site operational processes through IoT devices and from one enterprise-level platform. Their rapid expansion is the result of their deeply rooted passion for home automation and dedication to bringing the very best smart home technology solutions to our customers' communities. So thank you for joining us today. Now for Tyler's introduction. Tyler sits as Funnel's newest CEO, driving the company towards continued growth. Tyler leads the revenue organization, including sales, marketing, and client experience. He brings over a decade of multifamily experience to Funnel, including 6 years of multifamily software sales. And prior to joining Funnel, Tyler was at Entrata, where he was responsible for running the national sales organization. Tyler has a proven track record of success both at Entrata and his past position as director of multifamily sales at the Rainmaker Group, a revenue management and profit optimization software company. And for those who are listening who are based out of the States and might not have heard of Funnel just yet, Funnel is the industry-leading marketing and leasing platform for multifamily owners and managers. Funnel is on a mission to fix the rental experience. They've built an award-winning CRM that eliminates repetitive tasks and online leasing tools that streamline the apartment leasing process, enabling multifamily professionals to generate more profits, efficiency, and insight across their portfolios. So in short, Funnel is just building a better leasing experience for everyone. And now, time to start the show. And let's start, because you both come from the multifamily space. I would love to hear, and so would the audience, how has that space changed since you both entered the market? Demetrios, why don't you go ahead first?
Lou, thanks again. I'm gonna pick on Tyler a little bit. Over the years, we've known each other and crossed paths many a times. And so when I think back into my entrance into property management, I was a kid just trying to get through college. So I was a leasing agent, and back then, I had to make sure that I chose the right color ink to write guest cards, and at the end of the day, I would, file my guest cards and all of these different things. And you kind of fast forward to today, and I'm blown past smart right now. I want to go straight to what Tyler's doing. I mean, really just that whole process is digitized. It's automatic now. So when you think of just the raw technological innovations we've seen in this space, it's night and day. And I'd also add, typically, the property management space, kind of lags behind some of those other markets. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about where we're at today, man, I almost want to go back 15 years and start this all over again.
And Tyler, what have you got to add to that? What's your whole experience been since you first entered this space?
Yeah, well, and I'll keep the bromance going. I'll give Demetrios SmartRent a compliment because, likewise, as mentioned, I've been in this space for about 10 years. I actually started more on the asset management acquisition side. And what was interesting, obviously, is that that really has driven technology in the space, which I think is candidly backwards. But we started from the asset, the ledger, and really thinking about just the NOI, which obviously makes sense. This industry is about making money, but that really over the last 10 years, we've incrementally been chipping away at that old school mentality. And as we've seen other verticals, beginning to focus on the consumer, right? The customer, and realizing that focus will lead to better returns. And I think the biggest change from kind of a technology perspective is software has been in multifamily 20, 30 years. But on the residential technology, the embrace of hardware, the embrace of smart properties that, Demetrios and team started on the single family side by necessity, that really to me has been the engine, not only clearly for what's happening now in the COVID leasing environment, but really facilitating more opportunity for us on the software side to innovate. Because when we have connected communities, we have access with smart locks, that really opens up a whole new world. So to answer your question, I think about what's changed in the market. I think allowing the shift to focus more towards the customer, that renter experience, and then bringing in the smart hardware into the properties has opened up really just a world of possibilities. And thinking back to when I started, when really all they cared about was the value of the land itself, it's been a big shift.
And I guess before we go into the technology side of it, and I'd love to hear a bit more about both your products. You mentioned obviously the customer. Since both your times, what does a customer now look for? Okay, we can talk about sort of pre and post sort of COVID, but what are the tenants expecting now? What do they want? Demetrios, do you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, I'd love to. And really just to keep the energy going. When I think of not only just a renter, but any consumer today in any vertical for any type of product, really what sticks out to me is being able to move quickly, being able to have options, and being able to move on your own time, right? And I think for the multifamily and the various property management verticals, COVID has helped push some folks to adopt more technology to allow those things to happen. But I'll leave real estate for just a second, and you're seeing car dealerships completely move into an online only scenario. You're seeing food delivery happening more than not. So, again, I think the same can be said for, real estate in general, in the sense of, as we were talking in, kind of the pre-show, Lou, I work 10, 12 hours a day. And, and if I want the ability to go, look at a new home or go check out a new apartment, I want to be able to do that on my own time. And for me, that time may only be 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And so when you think about that and having that the ability to do that, I really think that's what those renters are asking for. And then I'll take that to the next step from the experience perspective. I think a lot of folks are, because they have want these options. A lot of folks also don't want to be peppered with 10 or 15 apps or other services, they've got to figure out how to sign up with, so if you can bring a prospect into one of your assets, and that entire process is seamless into the move-in, where they've got a welcoming experience versus more sign-up things to do. I really believe that what really helps and changes the game for all of us, when compared to a few years ago.
Yeah, that definitely, for sure, and just making it a lot more easier for the customer. Tyler, what have you sort of seen change in them, what the customer looks for?
Yeah. And, Lou, to the introduction you gave earlier, some of your listeners that may not spend their every waking hour as Demetrios and I do in the very specific vertical of U.S. multifamily and residential technology, pre-COVID, the world of touring was a hot topic. But I would compare it to, video meetings, that all of us had done video meetings before March. But the change from Zoom being a part of your life to being one of the main things you do every single day, right, was exponential. And I think similarly in our space, the ability to facilitate self-service leasing, and most importantly, the one step that we really were holding back on was the ability to tour an apartment unit, right, or a home. And again, Smart Rent on the single family side really was a pioneer. I have actually lived at a Beezer community where Demetrios worked. I live in a single family rental home today. And that space by necessity, again, was already allowing the prospective tenant to go in and tour the unit on their own at their own time. But the multifamily space treated their units almost as hotel units, right? You don't get access unless you come to the front desk. And now, by necessity, again, we are seeing that complete shift towards making sure the units are retrofitted with the proper hardware. And then obviously where Funnel is focused is on facilitating, as Demetrios described, a seamless experience to facilitate self-guided tours, self-service leasing. And again, to maybe make that parallel with other non-prop tech verticals, Zoom obviously was the obvious winner. I'd say technology like Smart Rent is the obvious winner in a world where we're trying to eliminate the physical touch points. But behind the scenes, if you think about, companies like Twilio, that, your average consumer probably doesn't know what Twilio is, but if you look at their stock, they've been just as hot, if not better than Zoom over the last 8 months. Similarly, I think that the technology needed to facilitate what the renter is looking for has really been where the industry has been focused. Funnel, we did a press release last week. We've added 250,000 new units that have signed up for the platform since March.
Wow.
And so to your point, Funnel is not necessarily going to be a consumer tool that the renter is aware of, but facilitating that new consumer expectation where they're looking, as Demetrios said, for self-service is definitely what's afoot.
And let's hear for the audience, tell us a little bit more about how your products have developed. Obviously, I'm sure they developed a hell of a lot in the last 8 months. And congrats on all those new signups as well, Tyler. That's impressive. Demetrios, talk us through Smart Rent's product and how it's changed in sort of more recent times.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we, and Tyler, thanks for that call out of years past. So when I think about Smart Rent, we were a small company founded about 3 years ago, but the idea came to us back in 2011. Myself and the other co-founders, we were operators, single family homes, and we come from the multifamily space, which the big difference between the two is geography. And so we know we needed to leverage things like smart locks, smart thermostats, various other sensors, whether that's motion or contact, leak, you name it, in order to manage those homes. So in 2017, after helping make the company work for a ton of money, which we didn't see, we said, okay, we've got to solve this problem and take what we've learned to the industry. And so from 2017 to 2019, it was really just focusing on that core experience and getting our product out in the hands. And so over those 2 years, we did about 80,000 units, and then COVID happened. We all kind of took a break, forcefully, unfortunately. And during that's when we had this opportunity to really go back to our product, our offerings, and say, how do we enhance? And during that process, we were actually reached out to by some of the United States' largest home builders and saying, hey, we saw what you guys did for the multifamily space, the single family renter space. Help us as builders get these houses in the hands of new home buyers. And so over the last year, effectively, we have entered more verticals. So again, that home builder space offering, a full-blown package. So when you now go buy a home, you're buying a smart home, again, very similar to that renter experience. Now as a home buyer and consumer, again, you've got that full-blown experience as you move into that house on move-in day. So that was a big win for us, focusing on kind of not the home or the unit anymore. We really said, we're tired of talking about smart homes or smart apartments. We really want to talk about smart communities. And in order to do that, you're now leaving the asset and you're now focusing on whether it's common area space, administrative spaces, parking lots, gate access, elevators, all of that. And so when I think about, the last few months of us really focusing on that side of things, we've made tons of new partnerships, creating just more seamless experiences. And I go back to my love for Tyler. If you're a prospect going through that experience, now as a Smart and as a hardware partner, we are seamlessly going to be able to help Funnel facilitate that experience that they're delivering by leveraging those various touch points that we have around that community. And I want you to paint a picture for you, Lou, and listeners. Imagine yourself saying, hey, I want to drive into this community, and your phone is your pass to get you into that gate. Your phone shows you a map on where to park. That map then walks you around the community or around the neighborhood to get you to your location. And this entire experience is all being facilitated, whether it's through us or a partner like Funnel. And we're now leveraging that technology to provide such a seamless, touch-free experience just around that community or that neighborhood.
I'm not going to lie. I love the sound of this, and I love how many partnerships you obviously have to make it all on one platform. Now, Tyler, we'll hear about Funnel in a second, but going into your point, about partnerships, what partnerships are you looking for in the future, and what are some examples of the partnerships you have now, like Funnel?
Yeah, first and foremost, I've got to do a big call out to Funnel.
Shout out.
Funnel's been absolutely crushing the game, as Tyler said, in less than a year to see this team spiking at an additional 300,000 units. As Tyler talks about providing that experience for the prospect and not ultimately the consumer. I would say that I believe that when you are providing an experience for that manager, that renter, and that prospect, and it all comes together oh so well, your consumer experience just happens to be that much better, right? And so let's take that a step further to your question, Lou. So outside of the wonderful team at Funnel, various other CRM platforms, but I don't want to talk about software. I want to talk about hardware. Hardware is something that you're watching across the globe. Players like Amazon, Google, whether it's Salto, TLJ, Honeywell, folks across the globe are all getting into or have been in the Internet of Things space. And so for us, and I can't say I've trademarked this yet, but I know when I run around the office, which is predominantly virtual now, I'm screaming from the top of my lungs. I want to transition from here's the one or two ways you do something, and I kind of want to be the Pizza Hut or the Subway to say, you just want you a really awesome smart community. I'm going to help you facilitate the 45 different ways that we can do this, all while staying very crafted in that seamless experience. And I think that all goes back to your property management software. When you start this journey, you probably don't start with purchasing Funnel or purchasing SmartRent. I mean, we hope you do, but you probably don't. You're probably buying, as Tyler mentioned earlier, a ledger so you can manage these transactions. And so when you keep thinking about those integrations, those partnerships, I think it always just comes back to outside of bringing this all together, you've got to make sure you just integrate so tightly to that property management software. And I think just continuously growing and evolving that will always just open the door as we bring in more hardware into our scope.
Thank you for that, Demetrios. Tyler, I think you have a big thank you to Demetrios for that massive shout out to Funnel. Tyler, tell us a little bit more how about your sort of product and what sort of changed there, especially since you joined Funnel as the CEO.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I just Venmo'd you $20, Demetrios. So thank you, man. But Funnel actually, as Demetrios said, is a newer brand, but the company itself has been around since way back in 2011. It was known as Nestio at the time. And the genesis of Nestio was that it was born in New York City and originally was a B2C product. The concept that Karen, our founder, and Mike O'Toole, her co-founder, really built was they were trying to build a better renter experience, bringing almost a Pinterest to apartment shopping. And what they realized in particular in New York, which is very low tech and high touch, right? You've got additional stakeholders in the rental experience. You've got brokers and management companies and owners. They needed to facilitate, as Demetrios just explained, bringing all the parties together, right? And so that's where originally Nestio planned to be a B2C company. They shifted towards a B2B. And the problem that they were really solving was making sure that apartment availability was correct, right? So really, using our new name, starting at the top of that funnel. And what that provided for us is, as Demetrios just talked about, our industry has always historically been focused on the PM software. My background at Entrata, that is kind of the stickiest piece of the technology stack. And in the New York market, however, it kind of works in a different way. The top of the funnel, your listings management, just keeping track of what units are available to rent, is kind of the most important thing, and is almost handled separately. And so Funnel developed a very robust listings management platform that allowed them to integrate with the Yardies and Tratas Real Pages of the world, and then also integrate with all the different listing sites where a renter would go to find an apartment, and spend a long time in that space of the market, really perfecting the distribution or the syndication of available apartment units. So I joined the company in 2018, and really the goal and the opportunity was to take advantage of the changing landscape that we were seeing. Again, I referenced earlier Zoom. If you think about the biggest IPOs of 2019, you've got Zoom, you've got Slack, that really are tools, and I've got, both of them pulled up constantly on my computer. They're both tools that Gmail had, right? So why were these novel or so special? And it was the desire for best-in-class technology that could offer above and beyond what a single stack could offer. And so that same trend was happening in the rental tech space. And so that was an opportunity for Funnel and other CRM providers, as Demetrios referenced, to really start to craft a better leasing experience. But to your question, so I joined in 2018, we launched a CRM, we were seeing growth, but the exponential growth that I referenced earlier that really has been expedited with COVID is because of that changing consumer expectation. We have a question later on about digitization. And of course, COVID being the great accelerator, as everyone says, people accelerated down the path they were already on. And one big change for us that has happened, we are launching 2 new products quicker than we expected to. And those are, number one, finishing the entire leasing journey. So as Demetrios said earlier, it's one thing to go through that apartment, have a seamless experience, but at the end of the day, it only matters if they sign the lease, right? We get paid for we get paid for leases. And so Funnel is reinventing that leasing process that we can talk about at a different time with some really great fintech. And then the other piece that I wasn't planning to build, but ultimately, again, as Demetrios referenced, there's so many different stakeholders in the leasing experience today. You have the community manager, you have the renter themselves. In many cases, you have a centralized call center. And then we've been adding in, obviously, artificial intelligence, which is great, right? And there's a lot of great companies in the space that are pushing automated chatbots and virtual leasing agents. The challenge that our partners were having is that these virtual tools, these chatbots, when they lived outside of the CRM, in particular in March, when somebody says, hey, do I have to wear a mask to my tour? What are your COVID policies, right? That completely broke the bot. And the problem was there wasn't a handoff to a live person. And so we have developed our own virtual leasing agent. And I like to liken it to Tesla in the sense that, Tesla car can drive itself, but you still have to have your hand on the steering wheel. And so while we're using chatbots and AI to automate communication, again, to meet the consumer where they are, which is self-guided leasing, we want to be able to facilitate answers at midnight or whenever they're inquiring, but you've got to have the human touch still. So that's really what's changed for us, is that we're finishing out our full funnel. We're adding in that machine learning element to make sure that we're not completely reliant on the community manager, the centralized leasing person, but that third leasing agent now is a digital one that is much more responsive.
Yes, it gives it that extra bit of sort of personal interaction, which a lot of maybe tech folks or people aren't quite ready for the full digitalization of resi tech might need and seek comfort in. Speaking of the changing landscape, you mentioned digitalization. You've both been in the industry for a while, pushing digitalization of the industry. What have you seen a change in barriers or obstacles? Is obviously there's been more uptake. Both your businesses are doing very well now. What are the sort of main obstacles you think we have ahead of us? And my next question would be for the audience, for any prop tech salespeople or partnerships people in the industry, what advice can you give to them? Demetrios, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Great question. It's something that we were actually discussing yesterday as we enter the next few years of this shift. I said earlier, I think we all said earlier, the pandemic has kind of forced a lot of owners, managers, operators, investors to really think about the infusement of technology into their assets. And when I think about that, I think the real big challenge starts to become how ingrained are the various leaders of those various groups that I mentioned really thinking about how this technology is going to change their business. And what I mean by that is to say, when we first started the podcast, I made a comment of, hey, I used to write guest cards and I had to use blue ink if I started the day using blue ink, right? And someone said at some point, hey, use a CRM. You don't have to do that anymore. Fantastic. But no one really said, hey, Demetrios, there's a CRM that's going to automate this. So now you're going to stop doing that and you're going to change what you do all day. And I think that's to be true today in the sense of, I've got folks coming to us and saying, hey, SmartRent, please, we want to roll out all 100,000 units. We want to go live in 3 to 6 months. Okay, fantastic. That sounds great. However, your entire business processes and operations are going to change dramatically. And what I see happening is a lot of companies are finding maybe that tech person or that tech project manager, and they're saying, hey, you person, you go solve this problem for us. Well, what starts to happen is that person isn't your C-suite. So that person now has their own challenges of all of the things that are coming with this tech on how to infuse that into their business operations. And so what we see for the companies that are extremely successful deploying this hardware and this technology are the companies who take a deep breath, come together, and strategically focus on what are their long-term goals. And I'll give you a very precise example of this. Again, when we had home builders come to us and say, please help us, the idea of us rolling out smart locks was on one side of that table. And once we started installing, the construction guys came to us and said, well, how do I get keys to the random vendor that may come at any given time? Now, luckily, that's what we specialize in, so it wasn't a big deal. But if maybe that construction lead had been in those meetings months ago, there wouldn't have been a fire drill at the time of deployment. And so again, I just come back to saying we're here. Everyone's ingesting this technology, but I challenge any leader in this space, again, just to take a deep breath and leverage your partners to be more of a consultant to you versus, just some plug and play model that, things should be perfect day one. And I'll kind of wrap with, another example would be, I can't tell you how many times someone wants me to sign a vendor agreement that they have their landscaper sign. I'm not a landscaper. I'm controlling your property's data, your residents' data. So, I think some of those just traditional business processes and thoughts have to start at the top, and those teams have to come together stronger, more pragmatic in the beginning before diving deep into the world of tech.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What about Tyler? What's your experience been of I guess the industry and how forthcoming it's been to digitalization?
Yeah, and I love the question, Lou. And I think I'm going to take it exactly as you asked Demetrios. What are those roadblocks that we see for the continued innovation in the space? And then I love the second question, which was, what would you recommend to other sales companies that are looking to emulate the type of success that our businesses have been fortunate to have? And I think they're one and the same, the answer, because the big roadblock I see in this space is, there's actually a big conference going on this week, a big virtual conference in our residential technology space. And, you already hear certain comments about things going back to normal, which, I'm extremely excited, hopefully, to take a vacation, go over to Europe and in the spring and get out of the States. So I'm hoping there's a normal when the vaccine comes. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of business leaders are thinking that, oh, well, the demand for this new experience will be lessened, right? And as Demetrios was just talking about, I don't really have to be that disruptive to my business. Yeah, I've got this, the CTO we brought in, but I'm okay with the status quo. I think that's the roadblock, is the mentality of not embracing the truly disruptive, innovative opportunities in our space. Luckily, I think that there has been a sea change where you are seeing not just CTOs in our space, but you're actually beginning to see people in the prop tech space with titles like Chief Experience Officer, Chief Customer Officer. And that is where and to go to the second question of where are we finding success, we don't spend our time working with those companies and we're fortunate at our stage, we don't have to address the entire market. We're just looking for those innovative partners that share our vision, right? That are willing to say, hey, you know what? Like, we're not going to go back to the way we were doing things previously. We are going to go through, we're going to, and especially I think we need to talk about the hardware, the smart apartments. It requires capital, right? And it requires a lot of work. It takes a long time. We were able to, in the space of about 3 weeks after, in April, implement over 100,000 units for 2 of our partners. That doesn't happen on the hardware side. It takes a lot more work. And so it's easy for people to back up from that. But going maybe a step deeper into that analogy with the hardware, what has changed and what I hope will stay in a different mentality. If it doesn't, it's going to hurt the prop tech space in general. Is when I first heard about smart apartments, the whole sales pitch was simply about the NOI, right? How do I improve my net operating income by reducing leaks, et cetera, et cetera. And while to me, that is an ancillary benefit. The core focus should be on, again, the customer experience. And that was never the conversation previous. It's beginning to be the conversation that while there is this ancillary financial benefit to me as an asset manager, that installing, capital expense over time, it'll pay itself off. That is not the right way to look at the equation. The right way is to say, what does the customer demand? And if I can differentiate my product by having a better customer experience, I will win, right? I think we overcomplicate things sometimes in the real estate space. So that's where I see both, the challenge, the opportunity, and for, up and coming prop tech companies, don't try and address the entire market, right? The advice that Satya Nadella got when he became the CEO of Microsoft from Steve Ballmer was be bold and be right? And I think we think we've got a bold vision for the future of prop tech and multifamily in particular. And we need partners who think we're right.
Yeah, I second that. It's such a big space, and it makes sense to tackle little bits of it as you can sort of digest it. And then once you get that part of the product right, maybe look for other partners or develop your product as and when. Now, we've touched upon hardware and the customer journey briefly. I would love to hear from both of you. Are there any sort of major trends you've seen across, whether it's different states or cities, if there's been more of an uptake in your products or what people sort of look for, Demetrios?
Yeah, absolutely. Lou, and I hate to solely use the pandemic again as that motivating factor for a lot of folks, but simply put, in the last year, our installations are going up 70% month over month. I proud, blessed, and shocked all at the same time to see that, July, record installation month, August, record installation month, September, record installation month. There's no signs of stopping. We've got, this past week, we've had 3 large REITs basically say, hey, sign us up for another 50,000 units each next year. Right. And so everyone's moving in this direction, and it's not for, as Tyler so eloquently put, just the NOI at this point. Residents are demanding it. Insurance companies are demanding it. No longer does the Formica countertop upgrade or the fresh coat of eggshell paint solve the problem. The beauty is for folks like us in the hardware and the IoT space, I look at Amazon and Google. They do most of the marketing for us, right? Every time you turn on a television, you've got Alexa or Nest. Somebody's talking to a device on the TV. So ultimately, the residents are just begging for it. But I think what's been more exciting, and it just brings me back to that smart community concept. We're just so ecstatic to see how many folks are now saying, I've been trying to solve parking for the last 5 years, and all I've been able to do is amass a really large notebook of Excel spreadsheets of parking spaces. I want to monetize this. I want to differentiate my building. So when I look at, again, those smart community features, parking, general access control, I'm really excited about. And I keep just clamoring to see where we're going to take this in the next year as we get more and more sophisticated, in those offerings.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And what about Tyler? Tell us a little bit more about what changes you've seen across different sort of states and cities. Or I'm sure we can draw a comparison from your time at Entrata as well, and the development you've seen over the past few years since your, career move.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is a really interesting question, Lou, that I think listeners, may not be probably aware that there's been a lot of migration, obviously, in the States, but there's another element to how that is going to directly impact the prop tech space that I'm very curious to see how it'll play out. Right. At this point, it's very clear that the gateway cities, New York City, San Francisco, are struggling, right? And so we funnel much of our growth has been with the large REITs, publicly traded REITs across the country. And so they're obviously very focused, if you read their earnings transcripts, on where are people moving to. And the clear winner right now, and we'll see again if this shifts back, but is the suburbs, even in the metropolitan areas. Long Island's doing way better than Manhattan in New York. Much more so, it's the Sun Belt, right? I mean, basically from where Demetrios is sitting in Phoenix to where I'm sitting in Tampa, Florida, it is a good place to own property. And I think when you talk about hardware and the shift that's happening there, it will be interesting because even the REITs themselves are talking about, they are going to deploy capital into those markets, both in terms of new development, retrofitting assets. And I am hopeful. I'm a big fan of New York City. Nestio was founded in that city. I lived there with my family last summer. I'm hopeful that we see a shift back where rents again begin to grow in those markets, because the capital investments needed to advance the industry, the rental industry, and facilitate the type of environment that Demetrios was just describing of connected communities. And as a prop tech executive, it just gets me so excited to think about, he was just talking about parking, right? There's so much we could do with parking. There is so much to do with experience management when you start to have a truly smart community. But I'm worried that because of the shifts that we're seeing, if all of that capital only goes to the Sun Belt markets, I think that will further exacerbate the migration out of these great gateway cities and put them further behind. So it'll be interesting to see, do those large markets snap back in a way where capital flows back into them, and therefore they're able to retain, the type of people that my company, we have about 50 employees. The majority of those live in the New York City area. They live there because of the experience, right? So anyway, yeah, there definitely are different market trends that are happening across the country that thus far have favored the Sun Belt, the suburbs, and I think obviously, as Demetrios said, are leading to great advancements in those communities, those markets in particular, for better communities.
And talking of future opportunities, I know it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen, especially considering the year 2020. But how can we make our communities more connected? For your businesses, what's next for Funnel? What's next for Smart Rent in 2021? Have you got any fresh ideas or things coming up? Tyler, why don't you go first?
Yeah, and this is, I'm very excited to hear what Demetrios said. I guarantee that guy, he said he gets up at 4 a.m. every morning. I guarantee he's got a lot of good ideas when he wakes up that early. For us, I would say, as I mentioned, we've got a lot on our plate in terms of what we're implementing, products we're bringing to the market with our online leasing and our AI. But looking ahead of that, where we get really excited where the future opportunity exists, I talked earlier about those innovative partners that have a vision. And that vision, without giving away too much of the secret sauce that we think that we're cooking with, is bringing hospitality to multifamily, the same way that single family rentals really drove a lot of the growth in the multifamily prop tech space. I think that hospitality, and not necessarily their technology, but more so their business model, when you think about loyalty, you think about retention, In the world when I used to travel every single week, it didn't matter where in the country, where in the world I was going. I could find a property inside of the Marriott brand, which is my preferred brand, and I would stay at it, whether that's a Renaissance, a Courtyard, or whatever it was. That doesn't exist in the apartment space today. But our innovative partners, I'll give a shout out to some of those like Cortland or in Essex, who are, also SmartRent customers. They're thinking ahead of that customer experience and thinking, we spent so much capital trying to acquire a renter the first time and so little retaining them. And I think our partners are really pushing us in a direction as we complete our funnel, we complete that self-service leasing. How do we start that over again? How do we recycle that renter back into the experience? In particular, because I think the trends we're seeing, and I see this in my own life, I've moved 8 times in the last 8 years, and I've got a large family. That's
a lot.
It is, right? But mobility is certainly the norm now, right? And how do we capitalize on that in the rental tech space is a question that I think the largest and most innovative players in the space are looking at. So that's a vague answer, but I'm excited to see where that takes us. And clearly, again, if we have more hardware, smarter communities, there's a lot we can do to develop a better long-term rental experience and relationship.
Definitely. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next for Funnel in 2021. What about Demetrios? What's happening with SmartRent?
Well, SmartRent just sent Funnel maybe another $20 on Venmo, but that's a great question, and I'm gonna steal some of Tyler's words. I don't want to give too much of the sauce away, but Tyler, you hit it on the head, man. I think when I look at the world of hospitality, or the concepts of centralizing various aspects of the service model and experience, which is very parallel to the single family rental space. It really is about the maturation of that experience. And so huge call out to those players like, Essex, Cortland, Mid-America, UDR. I mean, the list goes on, where a lot of folks are saying we are doing everything in our power to make these capital expenditures, because while that's happening and we're getting that infrastructure in place, almost everyone is completely focused on how do we keep that experience beyond just that sales perspective. And so again, Tyler, I couldn't agree more, man. As a former owner, I tell you all day as a former property manager that if I do a better job at maintenance and service, my renewals are going to be higher, ultimately meaning I don't have to work as hard trying to get leases in the door because people just aren't leaving. And I think it's that truly, Lou, is whether it's us or hopefully anybody in the prop tech space, it's about that experience to keep people there. And then alternatively, as also Tyler said, how can I also help you transition to the next place? Because inevitably it's going to happen. And so that's something that we're seeing, for our residents that live at a SmartRent community, we're seeing residents more often. Maybe it's because we're becoming so large, who knows, but we're seeing a lot more residents. Oh, I lived here. Oh, this is a completely different community. Oh, my login, everything's ready to go. This is the experience that I'm used to. And so a lot of our partners are saying, hey, we're seeing a higher retention because there's no SmartRent at the next community, right? And so, I think it just completely comes back to how do we keep residents engaged beyond that initial contact, and if they do need to change, how do we help facilitate that and make that a seamless process?
God, so plenty for us all watch out for. I hope you guys both of you have a great end to 2020. I'm excited to see all that your businesses achieve in 2021. Hopefully a bigger year than 2020. This is bringing us to the end of the show, a slightly longer podcast than usual, but lucky for our audience. Before we go, is there anything that either you would like to share with our audience, and what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you as well? Tyler, shoot first.
Lou, just want to say thank you. This was fantastic. I think that what you're doing in the prop tech space and bringing more voices to the table and educating more listeners really is going to help push us in the direction we need to go. So thank you. And thank you for having me on today. If anybody would like to get in touch, whether on the vendor side or you own properties and are looking for ways to innovate on those, Tyler@funnelleasing.com. feel free to shoot me an email.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Demetrios, what about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't agree more, Tyler. Lou, what you're doing is amazing. This is hopefully not the last time we speak, because I know we're talking every quarter. So again, just thank you for having me once again. But for all your listeners, we are aggressively expanding into international land. So please feel free to reach out to myself, db@smartrent.com, or go to smartrent.com and hit the contact, and one of our lovely team members will reach out right away.
Thank you for that, Demetrios. And guys, I think I might need to wire you some money as well for that shout out. But thank you for both joining, both the listeners and obviously Tyler and Demetrios. I will leave you guys to continue your bromance. And Demetrios, special shout out to you for getting up at 4 a.m. today. I hope the sunrise is beautiful in Arizona, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you both after the podcast. Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our special guests. Make sure you visit our website, www.nmre.co.uk, where you can subscribe to our show, or you'll find us on iTunes and Spotify, where all good content is found. Whilst you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate if you could rate and review us on iTunes, or if you simply just spread the word. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday, and I'll catch you later.
Hi, this is Nelson from Property Quants. I'd like to invite you to join our Introduction to Data Science and Machine Learning for Real Estate seminar. To learn more, visit propertyquants.com/seminar and use special code LMRE20 on Eventbrite for a discount.
You're listening to a podcast company podcast. This was made by Podcast Syndicator, where we help you go from start to grow to making money with your podcast. Let us help you share your message and your voice with the world. Reach out now, Jason at podcastsyndicator.com or Brett at podcastsyndicator.com to find out more. Thank you for listening, and do come back to hear nothing but the best podcasts.